Dragon's Dogma 2 is a bit of a difficult game when it comes to finding other games like it. It has a very unique combination of in-depth combat system, open world with tons of different smaller stories throughout the game. There are games that are similar in some aspects, and then they take those particular aspects and ride with them further than Dragon's Dogma even does. So, for this list, I'll do my best to find you games that give you a similar feel, theme, and gameplay to Dragon's Dogma 2, while bringing their own unique experiences that will be well worth your time. So let's jump right into one of the best games of the last 10 years. Elden Ring is the culmination of many years of amazing games by From Software. It opened up things in a way that they hadn't done before in games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I think that a lot of FromSoft's games have a decent amount in common with Dragon's Dogma. Incredible boss fights that are dynamic, that can happen anywhere that you go, exploration that is very rewarding, and a ton of different items to collect. The open world of Elden Ring really solidifies this as a solid choice for people that are looking for something like Dragon's Dogma 2. You can pretty much go anywhere from the beginning of the game, which makes for some fun situations when you find yourself up against a boss that you have nowhere near the upgraded gear that you might like. But you can still take the challenge on and win if you try hard enough, if you have the skill, or if you bash your head against that wall enough times. I feel like Elden Ring is a game I could recommend to pretty much anyone, but especially for people that like Dragon's Dogma 2. The quest lines and the character interactions are a bit more vague, but it still has incredible lore for you to explore that elevates the game to an even higher level. Elden Ring is currently on PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC. There is one game that I think people will not have even thought of that has a lot of similar aspects of Dragon's Dogma 2, so much so that I was surprised it hadn't come to mind before. But that's probably because it's unfortunately trapped on a game console that not a lot of people bothered to buy. Xenoblade Chronicles X is the black sheep of the Xenoblade series, not talked about as much as the other games, but it's actually an incredible experience in many ways. There are so many different aspects of Xenoblade Chronicles X that are almost a one-to-one with Dragon's Dogma 2. The massive network of interconnected relationships between characters, incredible scope of exploration, huge beasts that you work your way up to fighting, a story that doesn't necessarily take center stage all the time, multi-tiered questlines for various NPCs which increase your affinity with those NPCs, and the NPCs having clear affinity relationships with each other. So that's a ton of different things that are actually very similar. Yet, Xenoblade also has something that I've never really seen done in a video game before or since, and that is the mech system. Once you get to a certain point in the game, you unlock your own upgradable mech called a Skell. It levels up as you play, and even unlocks different modes of traversal, eventually culminating in the ability to fly. That's very interesting for this kind of game to do that. Something that, like I said, I don't think has been really done in another game since. The story and setting and the themes in Dragon's Dogma and Xenoblade X are where things differ by quite a bit. Xenoblade Chronicles X is very much a sci-fi game with a lot of the packaging that comes with that. Alien species, all kinds of technology. Definitely a game I think deserves more attention than it gets, and it's actually pretty similar to Dragon's Dogma 2, just with a different setting. The rest of the Xenoblade series has some aspects of that, but much tighter and linear storytelling. Depending on what you're looking for, that could be a good or a bad thing. Unfortunately, right now, Xenoblade Chronicles X is trapped on Wii U, but play the game any way you can because it is well worth it. The Witcher Wild Hunt is one of my favorite games, probably in my top 2. It has an incredible story, a unique world, and a ton of different characters for you to meet and interact with. And it also shares a lot of aspects with Dragon's Dogma, from various missions to take care of monsters at different locations in the world, random encounters that can sometimes blossom into entire quest lines out of nowhere, often minute things that you might not think mean much that turn out to lead to even larger consequences and more interesting interactions. It might not have the same tight combat that really keeps you engaged, but I think that the rest of the systems that are built around it are good enough to carry it. Which isn't to say I think the combat is bad. It just doesn't reach the heights of other games on this list, like Elden Ring and Dragon's Dogma itself. The world has a feeling of immense history, and you see glimpses of that as you move through the world. And there are a lot of different locations. You can spend a huge amount of time just wandering around, looking at random things, which kind of gives me a similar feeling to Dragon's Dogma, where I just like the experience of being in that world and letting time pass by. The Witcher Wild Hunt is on all current consoles, and there are frequently crazy low deals on Steam and GOG, so I would pick it up when you see one of those. Dragon Age is one of those series that I come back to over and over again, especially Dragon Age Origins. It's a story that's timeless, with systems that I think have aged pretty well over time. Dragon Age shares a lot of similar themes with Dragon's Dogma 2, so if you're looking for something that is fantasy, with a little mix of dark fantasy inside of that, and a lot of your typical fantasy beings like knights, mages, dragons, and the like, both games dive headfirst into that mold, and they both have their own unique twists on that as well. Dragon's Dogma 2's central conflict is a story of political intrigue that has you roaming the world in search of answers to certain mysteries, which is something that is also present in Dragon Age. They also have a combination of supernatural otherworldly power that threatens the world, which in Dragon Age comes in the form of the Archdemon, another dragon with evil intentions. Both games also feature parties that you go into combat with, though Dragon Age has a bit more of the old school feel with real-time with pause combat. And honestly, it's one of the best iterations of that particular style of combat. So if you aren't necessarily looking for a one-to-one in terms of gameplay, but more overall themes, Dragon Age Origins would be an excellent choice. You can play it on Xbox Series X, PS4, and it's also on PC platforms like Steam and GOG. Monster Hunter World can be a bit divisive when it comes to this, but I'm putting it in here regardless. There are a lot of Monster Hunter fans who will insist that Monster Hunter and Dragon's Dogma aren't even close to each other at all in the way that they play, but the reality is they are close. They're both third-person action RPGs where you fight against large monsters. They're both made by Capcom. Monster Hunter Rise even uses the same engine. But I would be more likely to recommend Monster Hunter World to people that enjoy Dragon's Dogma 2. If a big part of what you enjoyed about Dragon's Dogma 2 was the big moments where you fight monsters, then this is a game that is all about those moments. It has a very satisfying game cycle where you get better at killing those monsters, gather materials, and watch your numbers get higher and higher. So if you're looking for something that leans more towards the story part of the spectrum, Monster Hunter probably isn't for you. Though Monster Hunter World does lean a little bit more into that than some of the other titles in the series. If you want something that has really good gameplay and a really good gameplay loop, that is what you'll get with Monster Hunter World. And if you enjoy it, there are plenty of other games in the series for you to potentially play. So there you go, 5 different games that are like Dragon's Dogma 2. Nothing is an exact copy of it, because it's very unique. But these are games that will scratch that itch for you, as long as you give them a shot. I know some of them might not seem like they make sense at first, but I promise, if you play them, you'll understand. There you go, there's a place to start. Good luck on your search.